slay this thing as fast as we can. We're going to move on. I'm Tom McKay, your 3D Politics host with 2 out of the 3 Davids. I got David Van with SoonerPolitics.org and David Oldham with ConstitutionalGrounds.com. This last Thursday, we had an exciting rally at Veterans Park, and I want to tell you that the 3 guys that really were the heroes were 3 homeless veterans. There's a friend of mine named Rick, a.k.a. Rico. He's a veteran of the Navy, and he helps out the local veterans, especially the ones that are down on their luck. Well, I didn't know it, but he came out with 3 of his homeless friends, veterans, Joe and Ken, and another guy named David. They helped me set up all the wires, and a lot of things that isn't getting reported is that the power was cut. That is the Frank Grove and Eli Green, your 2 disturbers. They came and yanked someone of their group, pulled the power for our microphones.
Did we find out it was their group?
I have. Whoever came to disrupt our party, and Frank Grove admits he came there to disrupt our party. So I would suggest it's Frank Grove, Eli Green, or one of their friends or cohorts. But the fact is, 3 homeless veterans. Not only did they help me set up, but the reason the power kept going and all of our speakers were well amplified, and that well amplified sound cut out all of the noise in the background mostly, it was because Ken, a homeless veteran, sat there and guarded the power while Joe helped me do everything else and David followed up on the cleanup. So we had 3 homeless vets were the real heroes of the show, and if we wouldn't have had power, then Frank Grove and Eli Green would have been able to disrupt quite a bit more. The real standout speakers, one of the things that was totally overlooked was what our speakers said. And I got to tell you, the real standout kid that I just loved was this, he's got a double major, Evan Shaw. Did you hear him?
Yeah.
This Evan Shaw guy, this guy is amazing. TU, double major, psychology and economics. This guy is amazing. I loved his message because I thought he flew in the face of some of the other messages. I heard some of the speakers say that half of America hates this country. Well, I don't think that's true. And I think what Evan Shaw was saying was that the media pretends those lies to us. There were 2 people that were coming out to ruin our party with a few of their friends. And really, that's not half the country. So Evan Shaw did a great job. He talked about some of the Herbert Swope, a quote from Herbert Swope: "Try to please everybody, it equals failure. For true patriots to be silent is dangerous." That's a Samuel Adams quote. These were some of the great stuff I saw from Evan Shaw. What did you guys think about that rally?
Well, I was there. I am not a fanatic for Donald Trump. Was there to talk about constitutional grounds, wearing my "Make America Constitutional Again" hat, and talking with people about what we need to do to make America constitutional. I will disagree with you, Tom, that half of America hates, or half of
you think
Americans
they do?
hate. I think it's way more than that, because they hate the Constitution and they don't follow it, and they don't push for it, and partly because so many are caught up in all the illegal schemes set up by the government, and therefore they push and whine and moan about the destruction of these, or the ending of these programs.
I want to say something.
I'm publishing a couple of pictures from that party while I was there.
I want to say it would be nice if they were honest enough to say what you're alleging about hating the Constitution. I think they're self-delusional and say, no, they are the defenders of the Constitution.
Oh, I guarantee you that.
Yeah.
But the point is, whatever your reason for stepping away from the Constitution, again, there's no ignorance before the law is no excuse. We have a very simple law here. Basically, let alone, let others be. don't force your will on others.
Yeah.
It's really pretty simple, but people want to force their will on others. I had somebody I was talking to today who demands that Medicaid be expanded. And the question is, at whose cost?
Yeah.
But they
Right.
demand it, and that demonstrates the hatred of their fellow Americans.
Sure.
And you can't have love for America and hate Americans.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it just doesn't work.
It really comes down to selfishness.
Yes.
Yeah, it's at the core of it.
Yes.
And because they're not against the Constitution, they're against the Constitution not allowing them to be more selfish. They love the Constitution for the rights it does give them. Now they just claim that there's rights not in the Constitution that ought to be, like all the health care that I can sit in the waiting room and wait for.
Well, but the thing is, they also deny the Constitution because they deny your Second Amendment right. They deny your right to your own property because they
That's a
demand
good
it.
point. But
So-
they want their First Amendment right.
well, of course, they want it. They don't want you to have
Exactly.
it. but They want
it's
it.
that selfishness.
And so the point is that I think that's the key thing is that when people are selfish, when they are not concerned as much for their neighbor as for themselves, then we have a major problem, and that is the root of all of our issues. It's at the root of all of our issues, that money.
Yeah. Now,
But go on.
I want to say my take on. Actually, I stopped by. I was on my way to a board meeting for mental health group NAMI, and I went. I got a chance to see you guys. I saw that little tent over there by the curb. And I did not recognize Frank being there. Frank's somebody I've actually worked with last year on some legislative initiatives, and the interesting thing was I thought I was getting somewhere with him because when I showed him that the left is just as much an enemy of liberty as what he perceived the religious right.
Right.
The blue law thinking
Right.
in that, and I said you can't let you got to be careful of both sides.
Correct.
Correct. And he bought that, and so much so that when we were at a board meeting later after that, I said, "So what's next for you?" He said, "I want to keep working on liberty issues with you." Now that was a year ago. Now Frank's with Antifa, and as a result, this week, the very next morning when I saw that 6:30 in the morning, I issued my resignation from the board. Where because again, we're not on the same page, and we can't proceed together on that.
Well, and I got off on my little rant, and so I didn't finish up. So
That's why we're here,
my point was that I was there as pretty much an observer.
Yeah.
And not an outright participant. I've been accused of being a diehard Trump supporter. But my point was that I was being fair. And nothing would have happened if they'd have kept silent or kept a distance, and then they could have yelled, but without interrupting and attempting to verbally disrupt the event. Yeah. Later on, they were trying to march through with their flags. Mm-hmm. And only because other people came in and bodily kept them from doing that did that not happen.
Wait a minute, isn't that what we have police for?
This was a poorly set up event. We did not have control of the perimeter. We didn't have control of the sight line. People came to purposefully disrupt, and we had no way to stop anybody from getting anything backstage.
Well, the one thing that I did notice was that our lying, let's use Trump's words, lying fake media jumped right into it when scuffles did break out, and it was only to keep them from disrupting verbally and keep them out of walking over people. I got involved when they actually were running into people. They were running around between people. They were tripping over people who were sitting there. They ended up knocking one guy in the side of the head with their flag. I think it was inadvertent, but if they hadn't been there, it wouldn't have been an issue. Sure. The guy who was sitting there had been there the whole time. It was them coming through as the issue. So I then even got involved and was like, no, you're not coming in. You're staying right out here, and because at that point it's an issue of harm to others.
Yeah.
And that is the point at which I think that it's a duty incumbent upon all of us to look out for our neighbors.
I think one of the problems we have here is a changing dynamic in the political world where this old theory of let's just ignore them and sit back and let them walk on us while this happens. Eddie Huff, I don't think that works. Eddie Huff said, they're only here because the media is here. Just let the media go. This is a media fight. We have to be able to have our media reps meet with the local media and give our side of the story.
Well, afterwards, that was the thing. The lying media misrepresented every article I read. Every single article I read misrepresented what happened. Not one of them came right out and said that they came to disrupt, although they snuck it in one article. I think it was the Tulsa World article or Channel 2 article.
Frank Grove says, we came to disrupt this event. We want them to be aware that not everybody in Oklahoma supports Trump.
But how did they start that? They started it by saying, a stand for President Trump heats up when people with opposing views clash. Supporters held rallies in cities, it says, but the modest turnout grew with rage after a handful of protesters showed up. That is absolutely not true because they had been there for, 5-10 minutes? Before,
a lot longer.
Before they ever started trying to disrupt, and nothing happened. It was silence. Everybody knew what their flag said. Nothing happened.
It wasn't until they yanked the power. When the power
there was the power, it was the yelling.
That's because they got
They
him worked
pulled
up.
the power, and then they started.
talk.
Look, they were unable to accost our speakers because they were well amplified with professional sound. When they yanked the power, we lost our amplification for our speakers, and then they were able to yell louder than our speakers, disrespecting the women and reverends there. So it was only because of the homeless veterans that guarded the power for our speakers, like Jaron Jackson and the ladies that spoke, that we were able to continue to hear our speakers. And it was 15 minutes before they gave us trouble. Then when I encountered them, it was another 15 minutes before they worked up their nerve. And then they kept yelling, but they didn't get the response they wanted. So they came back behind the stage and began to approach the equipment, which is,
that's private property.
Well, the point is, you can't. It was a poorly designed event. Bob Jack threw everybody into an ambush. He maybe didn't mean to, but he clearly doesn't have the wherewithal to run an event like this.
Well, none of us
He doesn't.
do.
I do, David.
Oh.
And they didn't run the event properly. They put us in harm's way.
Well, keep in mind,
I shouldn't have had to run security, and I shouldn't have had any protester get near me.
Yeah,
okay?
but again, Bob Jack was not running this
And
event.
if Bob Jack was asked to do something stupid, and Bob Jack says, "Okay, whose fault is it?"
I understand.
Okay.
I'm just pointing.
Okay.
It wasn't
Let's
Bob
establish
Jack's. It
this
wasn't
was
Bob
a
Jack's.
Tulsa
It was that
912.
dark money, as they call it.
Tulsa
Tulsa 912 Project and
and
Women for America First will rally.
There you go.
And that is what they call staff writer for Tulsa
Well-
World dark money.
No. What I'm trying to say, my point here in this is you don't want somebody who's not in charge of it usurping authority and taking over.
Okay.
So you
Who
can't-
asked the
can't-
speakers to come speak?
I would assume it'd be Rhonda Belmont Smith. And
I think
the leaders.
I think there was a coalition of
Okay.
people going out and recruiting
The
speakers.
way it happened, they put the speakers in a dangerous situation.
I understand that. I'm just, when you singled out Bob, listen, if it was his event, then yeah, the buck stops there. Now,
but
If Bob allowed the thing to happen, it was a
And
GOP.
it was not a.
David allowed the thing to happen.
I don't believe
You
it
know
ever
what?
was dangerous.
No.
These people were not there dangerously. They were foolish in so much that somebody got knocked, but nobody was, was
But
hurt.
listen, the cutout, the truck, and the trailer was Bob's equipment, just like the sound was yours. You protected your equipment. Bob protected his.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying you don't have other things to criticize here. I'm just setting the record straight. Rhonda's organization did the local event.
Yes.
The GOP in Oklahoma, Tulsa County,
Well, they did take dual credit for it.
they didn't.
Well, there you go. Then it goes with.
That's what I'm saying. They're
Okay.
not
Yeah,
running
they
it
did
safe.
Then all I said stands corrected. Then, if they were part of that leadership, then they share in the responsibility for it.
Well, the
These-
thing is that we don't actually expect these kinds of things to happen. Obviously, from now on, we're going to know that
That's
they're
the
going to.
problem.
Yeah.
Why did you not expect it? Why did the GOP not expect some
Okay.
sort
I
of
think
security
because a lot
needs?
of-
They knew they had to open the bathrooms. They knew they had to open the bathrooms. Why didn't
Who?
they think they had security?
Who?
Somebody had to get
That would be the
authority.
park department.
But when you get a permit to have
Right,
your people
right,
come
right.
out there, you got to ask for them to
Okay.
open the bathrooms.
Okay.
So they knew they were going to have a crowd out there. They knew they needed bathrooms open. Why didn't they think about security?
Yeah, I know.
Well, I don't know.
I
As
don't
long
either.
as we give equal time to saying, by God, there wouldn't have been a rally if someone didn't step up and organize something.
Absolutely.
It was all, it was volunteers, it was amateurs. Right? It was amateurs.
I'm a professional sound man. I mean,
The did sound good.
Thank you for...
it wasn't perfect. It was just loud enough to overcome the yelling, screaming,
Right.
barbaric.
Well, and that's the point, is that they came to disrupt. They got the lying media to back them up. No one from the event was interviewed after the scuffles that took place. Not one attendee was sought for their input, to my knowledge. Not one.
Well, they interviewed.
Rhonda and Bob were interviewed
Yeah.
before the event. They were not interviewed after for follow-up thoughts. And by the time everything ended, all media had disappeared. So
once they got their shots, yeah.
once they got their
Exactly.
shots and they got the protesters on tape, they did not wait around for 15 minutes for everything to end.
Yeah.
And get some follow-ups or even pull anybody off to the side.
So get this Tulsa World sentence here. Tulsa police officers break up a skirmish between Trump supporters and counter-protesters. Now, here's one of the problems I have with the lying media. When we have our event that was permitted to be at the park, that's a positive occurrence. That is, a thing is going to happen. That's not a protest. It doesn't matter what kind of party we're having. We could be having a pro-Kenesha
Yeah,
party
there's no
or an
counter.
anti-Kenesha party. We could have a pro-birthday party or an anti-birthday party. Whatever our permitted access to the park is, that's the event. Protesters came to disrupt
not
our event.
counter-protesters.
They're not counter-protesters. They came to
We weren't
disrupt.
protesting any. There was no protest there.
So, here's the thing. Yeah, when you're renting out, because that's what it is when you get a permit, it's a form of rent. There are certain expectations you should have that you'll be allowed to do it orderly. If they allow you to put up any kind of barricade fencing, then great. If the park department says, no, we don't allow that here, now they're putting more responsibility on the police. Now, my question is, did the police respond promptly?
Fairly.
I can tell you that they arrived, they were called about 40 minutes in, 35 minutes in, and it was quite a bit later before I knew they arrived. But what I
it was
heard...
10, 15 minutes.
Okay, but I do know that they were discussing it while I was tearing down equipment, and they said they stood up at the top and just kind of watched for a while.
Well, they were unable to tell. This was after they came the first time.
Oh, okay.
A couple of them stayed up there to keep tabs on things and make sure things didn't fire back up. And they were unable to tell what was going on because it was behind the stage and behind all the signage, so they were unable to see. So
They didn't come down there to check it out.
No, because they didn't know what was happening.
And they didn't come down there to check it out because
They
they
didn't
didn't
stay
know what was
there.
happening?
They didn't stay there. Right.
You mean they didn't I'm talking about when they were up at the top of the hill just watching the melee.
They couldn't see the melee.
And they didn't come down to check it out.
Well,
Yeah, they didn't know there
wait
was
a minute,
anything to check out from
Oh,
their
yeah.
vantage.
How do you know what's not there
They
that you
couldn't
can't see is there?
They
Yeah.
couldn't
Right.
see anything.
The one thing that they did mention was that they couldn't see it because it was taking place behind the signage.
So
Now
how
that-
come they didn't come around the back, sneak around the back with their guns drawn?
Because nobody had called them
just
yet.
saying, it
Nobody had
seems like
called
a
them a second
non-emergency
time. Nobody had called them a second time.
I mean, what the hell?
As soon as they, fortunately, we're not we're not in Dallas Fort Worth. They did come back when called a second time. They got redispatched. They walked over.
We should have called for a welfare check.
Listen, Bob, Jack, I'm really sorry. I think that your leadership is, it's probably been well valued over the years, but this type of event is not your strong point.
I saw on social media some comments, including from Rhonda, put it on that she's got a lot of notes she made about we've got to get better on this, and I forget. I don't want to claim to.
There were lots of lessons learned on this one.
There are, and a bunch of people making notes on stuff. So I think we've got to, understand that. We're going to get better at this. We are not the people who are good at this. The other side, Frank Grove was part of Occupy Wall Street. He was living in a little tent.
Stand toe to toe with Frank Grove.
Well, let's understand. It's easy to tear things down.
Yeah.
It is much harder to have a positive message. Let's face it, their message was ridiculous. They want the war in Syria to continue. That was their message.
Yeah.
And hello, do we not have loved ones that we want out of harm's way over there where they don't belong?
See, now in my day, the pot smokers were the anti-war people.
Well, that's the point. Is things are flipped on their heads, and these are the same people who are demanding your money be paid, that you pay for things they want,
sure,
and so forth, and it's real easy to raise a ruckus and scream a lot and demand things.
Yeah.
It's much more difficult to try to have an orderly discussion and have a, and protect yourself from criminals like these people, because they literally acted as criminals.
Well, and you'll notice that it's kind of like the reverse matchy of not in my backyard. I'll protect my equipment. Bob will protect his truck. And these people that were videoing out in the stands, they were saying all the while when the melee started, don't be the troll, don't give them what they want, until the Antifa guys got back by their phone and they were like, hey, stay away from my phone. Ignore them until they're next to your stuff.
Well, and
then you'll step up.
That's a vital point. Now there were several attendees who stood up and did protect the rest of the crowd from having them running through and all of this.
Yeah.
In fact, there was a scuffle, there was a tug of war over one of the flags and so forth. It shouldn't have, but here's the point. They acted as the security that wasn't there, by design. They stepped up and did that sort of thing. That's what I stepped in to do when they're running over people. And that was a good thing. Again, remember, the protesters were only trying to create that situation because people get all squeamish inside when they see it. It is the same thing. It is nothing different than what the Nazis did, what the communists did when they were trying to disrupt society in their days. Nothing different. The only difference is the amount of violence used. Here we're milquetoast compared to the Russians and the Russian communists and the Nazis. But the techniques are identical. Go in and break up a meeting, and rather than clubs, we're going to wave a flag. We're going to yell real loud. But our nation and our society has become so squeamish that when we see that, it's like, oh no, there must be something wrong. Everybody has to get along. Oh, we have to be good. And the thing is that these people don't have the right to be breaking in.
This was disturbing the peace. It's against the law to disturb someone's peace. It's not about sharing the park. You don't get to scream in my face while I'm doing my art.
Exactly.
When you go to a Trump rally, in fact, several of my family went to the one in Minneapolis that was so ruckus in that. Those rallies, they're not for the faint of heart. I mean, you got to stand in line half a day or camp out to get in.
Oh, there were guys there for several days.
Okay, this event was mostly the Luby's cafeteria crowd. Was there? It was. I mean, the average age was. I'm sorry, I would have been one of the younger ones.
Right.
in that they seem to be the only ones that are still disciplined to show up at these events and show some interest. Most of the people younger than us aren't showing up.
One of the problems is there's no focus of the information from the group. You couldn't tell if it was a church service or a political rally. You're going to lose a lot of neo-Republicans because they don't want to come to a church service.
Yeah. Well, I agree with that. And that's.
I mean, I don't mind. I believe in Jesus too, but the message was so mixed up. I love Trump because I love Jesus or something.
Well,
I mean,
and the message is mixed up because some of the people who were doing the speaking of that kind of a message are some of your blue law Christians who are actually those that constitutionalists abhor.
In this type of event, you need to focus all of the political rhetoric in the area at one time, and then add the religious aspect to it at another time. If it sounds like a pulpit church service all day long, it gives fodder for the anti.
Well, there's that too. Yes.
Yeah, well, my thing is, every segment of our society is going to have their get-togethers, and I'm just glad this segment of society showed up to wage their, we support Trump. I'm just disappointed that the other segments of society seem to not be showing up anywhere.
Well, and that may have been partly because of the communication, and the other thing is, because I don't think the national march was planned all that long ago to really get the word out.
Yeah.
So it would, I think you'll see that more as time comes. But again, I think there were a lot of lessons learned on this one.
We're going to have to get some John Waynes in the GOP around here.
Yeah.
I know that our side is really worried about the optics. Folks, we lost the optics fight 40 years ago. We just got to cling to the narrative. So see if you can fight for the truth out there. Salvation comes through faith, not through political optics, kids. And so, hey, I'm Tom McKay for 3D Politics. We're going to get out of here. A nice extended version. We're missing D'Ambroso, but tonight you've been enjoying David Van with SoonerPolitics.org, David Oldham with ConstitutionalGrounds.com, and I'm Tom McKay. You can just yell at me all you want at Tom E. McKay on Twitter, or catch me right here, 3dpolitics.com or 3D Politics Live on Facebook.